Hello and very warm welcome to the Canada News with your host Gurdwara. Now let's take a look on the headlines. Brampton West MPP Amarjot Sandhu raised the issue of unilateral closure of the international border, claiming that it was not taken seriously by the federal government. Brampton West MPP Amarjot Sandhu learned about the infrastructure projects run by the provincial government in the collaboration with the federal government and the municipality in the city of Brampton. COVID cases are on the rise in Brampton and the city positive rate is very high. MP Kamal Khera questioned the supply of vaccine, which also accused opposition of misleading the issue. Now news in detail. Brampton West MPP Amarjot Sandhu raised the issue of untimely closure of the international border, claiming that it was not taken seriously by the federal government. More than a dozen cases have been reported involving international travelers, and people are still coming to Canada via connected flights.
Mr. Speaker, for weeks now on this side of the House, we have been calling on the federal government to secure our international borders and stop the flow of COVID-19 variants into our country. Mr. Blair and Mr. Haidu don't think this is a serious concern, but since February, thousands of international travelers have tested positive for COVID-19 variants of interest and variants of concern. Mr. Speaker, does our government recognize the seriousness of variants of concern of flying in through our airports and driving in our land borders? What is the government doing to address this?
The Associate Minister for Small Business and Red Tape Reduction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. More than 5,000 air travel passengers have tested positive for COVID-19 since February. The Premier and this government have constantly been asking for the federal government to secure our borders and keep Ontarians safe. But the federal government has dragged their feet. We now have confirmed cases of the B1617 variant in Ontario, in Quebec, in British Columbia. We needed stronger action, like countries in the UK, Australia, who were able to secure their borders and keep their communities safe. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to call on the federal government to close all the loopholes. You can still take a connecting flight into Ontario and carry one of these deadly variants into the province. We need to protect Ontarians, we need to keep Canadians safe, and we need to ensure that the federal government takes stronger actions on our border.
Supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. More than 90% of new cases in Ontario are variants. The B117 variant, first found in the United Kingdom, is now the dominant form of COVID-19 here in Ontario. The federal government does not think securing our borders is a priority, but if they had taken action before it was too late, we may have been able to avoid this third wave. Mr. Speaker, it is still better late than never. Will the minister call upon the federal government to finally take action to secure our borders?
Associate Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we know the significant impact that these variants are having across Ontario through the third wave. We know that 90% of current cases are from variants. We now have confirmed cases of B1617 variant in Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia.
Brampton West MPP Amarjot Sandhu learned about the infrastructure projects run by the provincial government in the collaboration with the federal government and the municipality in the city of Brampton, with Brampton Transmit being the most important. Responding to this, the parliamentary assistant of the department said that 760 projects are being implemented by the government, including important projects related to GTA and Brampton.
Last month, I had the pleasure of joining our federal and municipal partners representing our government to announce infrastructure investments that will improve the local public transit system in the city of Brampton. Mr. Speaker, I was thrilled to see that our government has invested over $58.2 million for the latest Brampton Transit project. This funding will help ensure that Brampton's residents and visitors will be able to access more efficient and safe transit services, getting people where they want to go when they want to get there. I'm proud that our government is working with our municipal partners and federal counterparts to get these projects built, and I know my constituents are looking forward to a faster and more reliable commuting experience. Can the minister tell us how she is working with the federal government and our municipal partners to make meaningful investments for the people of Brampton?
The Parliamentary Assistant, Member for Oakville.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for this important question and for his continued advocacy on behalf of the people of Brampton. We now have nominated over 760 projects to the federal government for ICIP for approval. This includes 140 road, bridge, air, and marine infrastructure projects for a total provincial investment of more than $115 million in over 200 public transit infrastructure projects throughout the outside GTHA public transit stream. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, although COVID-19 has forced the world to slow down, we have not stopped building. Since January, we've made nearly 60 joint virtual events, like the one the member mentioned, delivering exciting news about infrastructure funding in partnership with the federal government, nonprofits, and municipalities. These projects can finally go from shovel-ready to shovels moving to get much-needed infrastructure projects built. Thank you, Speaker.
Supplementary question.
Thank you, Speaker. We have heard both the Minister and the Premier say that our government is investing $145 billion in Ontario's infrastructure over 10 years for broadband connectivity, transit and highways, schools and hospitals. And we know that this is a record-level infrastructure investment. Part of this investment includes the project I announced on behalf of the Minister of Infrastructure last month. This project includes the construction of nearly 400,000 square foot transit maintenance and storage facility. This facility will accommodate about 250 buses and will help improve the quality, capacity and safety of transit infrastructure in Brampton.
COVID cases are on the high rise in Brampton and the city positive rate is very high. MP Kamil Khera questioned the supply of vaccine, which also accused opposition of misleading the issue. Responding to this, Procurement Minister Anita Anand said that 31% of Canadians have been vaccinated, 14.7 million doses have been delivered to Canada and the provinces have begun booking adults. And all Canadians will be vaccinated by September.
Member for Brampton West.
Mr. Speaker, Brampton is one of the hardest hit communities by this pandemic. We've been a COVID hotspots with the highest test positivity rate in Ontario, where 1 in 5 people are testing positive. I've heard many questions from my constituents about vaccine supply, how many doses have arrived into Canada, and when will they get their vaccines. These are important questions. Unfortunately, the facts often get lost in misleading and partisan spins from the opposition. Can the minister please set the record straight, provide clarity on our procurement plan from day one and into the future? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question and want to assure the House and all Canadians that we are managing the vaccine supply chain in an incredibly competitive environment, leading to us already procuring 14.7 million doses received in Canada. 31% of Canadians have received at least one dose, and we are third in the G20. In fact, the provinces are so confident in our supply that both Ontario and Quebec have announced that they will start booking vaccine appointments for all adults before the end of May. Before the end of June, we will have 48 to 50 million vaccines in this country, and before the end of the summer, all Canadians will be fully vaccinated who want it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ontario Education Minister Stephen Lecce detailed education funding for the schools next year, announcing that more than $2 billion would be provided to students for the next school year, that $85.5 million will be provided for students' mental health.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me today. While students are home learning remotely, our province continues to directly tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. While we all want in-class learning to return this spring, we will not take risks with your child as we respond to high rates of COVID-19 in the community, intensive care units overwhelmed, and variants seamlessly entering from our porous international borders. But I want to assure parents that we will continue to work with and seek the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health on the way forward. The arrival of vaccines means there is hope on the horizon. As of May 6, I'm proud to confirm that remaining education staff who typically work in person in our elementary and secondary schools are eligible to register for a vaccine. And by May 25th, every Ontarian 18 and over will be eligible. This is the progress we need to defeat this pandemic. Since last fall, we have been forward planning for a safe return to school in September. We've heard firsthand from experts, from parents, and students themselves. This pandemic has been tough on children, their mental health, and adverse impacts to reading and math skills. This past year, we put in place a $1.6 billion plan to deliver safe and quality learning. We led the nation in investment and objectively with the most advanced and comprehensive plan. From masking to testing to the screening and cleaning in our schools, in every measurement we have led. And Ontario stands alone in Canada with a strong online learning infrastructure. We stepped up from the spring of 2020, higher standards and a more quality learning experience for your children. As we look to September, be assured, our Premier and government is pulling out every stop to ensure students are safe and quality learning is maintained.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh discusses COVID response program. He demanded higher tax for the large corporation and said that revenue collected through this could help small businesses.
Thanks so much, Tracy, and a big thank you to Brian Massey, incredible member of Parliament and previous member of Parliament representing Windsor and Essex County. It's great to be back. Windsor is where I spent a lot of my childhood. It's where I grew up, so it's always awesome to be able to be back virtually in Windsor and Essex. And a really big shout out to Michelle for being here as well. Thank you. What we're saying clearly is that there's been a choice made by the Liberal government. And in this pandemic, their choice has been to help big box stores, large corporations, the wealthy, the ultra rich, and not small businesses and people. They've made that choice, and the result of that choice is small businesses have hurt. Many of them are worried about shutting their doors and never opening again. Many of the small businesses that we're talking about are the businesses that people are most proud of. When you think about your community, when you think about Windsor and Essex County, people think about the small businesses that make their communities unique and special. They think about their local restaurant, their local shops, their local services. Those are the services and shops and businesses that make people proud of their communities and make them proud of their regions. And those are the ones that are hurting the most. And so what we're calling for very clearly is that while the Liberal government has given all sorts of advantages to the largest and wealthiest corporations, they have ignored small business. And so what we're proposing are a couple of key measures. First of all, we need to make sure that the big businesses that have been really successful making record profits actually pay their fair share. We know that web giants that have made record profits.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has expressed concern about the third wave in Canada. Citing large gathering of people, why don't follow the corona protocol and do not consider it necessary to vaccinate against a corona vaccine. Such people are dangerous to society.
Unfortunately, some people are still choosing to join large gatherings or even go out of their way to protest public health measures and disrupt vaccine appointments. But here's the thing. The reason so many Canadians are following public health measures isn't just because they want things to get back to normal. It's because they care about their neighbors and about our frontline workers. It's because they know people who are vulnerable, people who could die if this virus keeps spreading. These protests are supposed to be about getting back to normal, but by spreading the virus, they do just the opposite and prolong lockdowns. So follow public health advice, but don't do it for me or for any politician. Do it for someone in your life that you care about. Do it because you respect your fellow Canadians. To the millions of people who are already doing this and who are stepping up to look out for those around you, thank you. As you do your part, know that we have your back. Across the country, we're deploying additional support to provinces and territories that have been hit hardest by this third wave. For Alberta, we continue reaching out to the province through the weekend. We're offering whatever help they need to get the situation under control and keep Albertans safe. For the GTA, the second team of healthcare workers from Newfoundland and Labrador will arrive at Pearson this afternoon on board a Canadian Armed Forces airplane. They'll join the first team that's already there, as well as the Armed Forces members who are helping in Toronto hospitals. And for all Canadians, we continue to deliver PPE, rapid tests, and of course, vaccines. We have now delivered 16.8 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines to the provinces and territories. This week, just like every week in May, we're receiving 2 million doses from Pfizer alone.
Leader of the opposition, Aaron O'Toole, has raised questions in the House of Commons about vaccination, rapid testing and tracing across the country. He said the Canadian government was failing in all three of these processes and that the government efforts were creating a dilemma for Canadians, to which Prime Minister Justin Trudeau responded.
Tools you need to fight a pandemic: vaccines, rapid tests, and information. And this government has been failing in all three, and the Prime Minister is causing confusion again this week. For months, Canadians have been told to get the first vaccine available to them. Today, the Prime Minister refused to confirm that advice on 10 different occasions. Canadians deserve clarity from this government. Is there a preferred type of vaccine?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's extremely important that Canadians get the facts, and that's why we continue to update them on scientific recommendations and experts recommendations of doctors. But the reality is, and I will say it as I said it many times this morning, as I've been saying it for months, the most important thing is to get vaccinated. With the first vaccine offered to you, it is how we get through this. Every vaccine for use in Canada has been judged safe and effective by Health Canada. We all need to get vaccinated to get through this pandemic.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, during the Mark Norman trial, we learned that General Vance was so close to the Prime Minister's office that he went to dinner with senior staff, including Katie Telford. Mark Norman could not have been charged, Mr. Speaker, without the testimony of General Vance. Did Katie Telford sit on the General Vance allegations to further the Norman prosecution?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
No.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, that's interesting, Mr. Speaker, because when this Prime Minister in January 2019 was asked questions about the Norman trial, he said he was in regular contact with General Vance. That was a year after the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney has announced new public health measures in the province in response to the coronavirus outbreak across the country. He said the new rules would be applicable in the municipality and the areas. He also announced that online training would be imparted in all the kindergartens and schools from May 7 to May 25th.
Our province has entered a critical stage of the COVID-19 pandemic. Like most places around the world hit by the third wave, it's been with us for a while now, but it has reached new heights in Alberta recently. We have set case records, but what's more concerning, we've also set a record for the number of Albertans with COVID-19 in intensive care. We have always sought as a province to protect both lives and livelihoods throughout the pandemic. This has meant resisting pressure to implement widespread and long-term lockdown policies because we recognize the severe impact on people's lives, and that's why we've taken a balanced approach, following the evidence and applying targeted restrictions. Restrictions that have been designed to limit viral spread. From day one, our goals have been to avoid large-scale loss of life, to keep our hospitals from being overwhelmed, while minimizing the damage of restrictions on our broader society. Governments must not impair people's rights or their livelihoods unless it is absolutely necessary to save lives, and in this case, to prevent disaster from unfolding in our hospitals. Unfortunately, that is the situation that we are facing today. The arrival of highly transmissible COVID variants in Alberta is putting real pressure on our healthcare system. Despite 64% of Albertans over the age of 50 having received at least one dose of a vaccine, the disease continues to spread at an alarming rate, especially amongst younger people. Now, let me walk you through the numbers. Today, we have 671 people in hospital with COVID-19, 150 of whom are in intensive care.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canadians will be able to travel abroad until the summer. He also said he would be coordinate and with other countries to provide the documents they need. This will include some forms of certificate or proofs of vaccination against COVID. In doing so, Trudeau has offered to clarify the concept of vaccine passport for international travels. His government will work with other countries to develop the necessary travel documents. Trudeau told in a news conference in Ottawa, but in the end, it's up to each country to decide what to expect from future travelers. So that's all we have in this edition. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more updated news.